Today I'm talking about episode 14. This is special. This is the first flashback episode for Michael. And I'll be honest, it's not one of the better episodes in the season. It might be the worst in the season, although worst is kind of a strong word. Like, not best. It just doesn't flow as well as worst. But yeah, this episode's not it. I don't really care for this episode all that much. Uh, and it's nothing against Michael. I mean, it's really it's really all about Walt and how you look at things in the scope of the show. Like, I always view the show as, you know, when I look at importance in the show, I look at the last 3 seasons, and especially season 6. So I think, if does a character or a storyline or whatever, does it have importance to the latter half of the show? And if that answer is no, then I don't see how important that character or storyline is. And again, this is no fault of the characters at all, but Walt Walt more so than Michael, but Walt and Michael aren't really important to the latter half of the show. I mean, obviously Michael does play a part in season 4, but Walt has no part in season 4. Walt has no part post honestly post season 1. I mean, by the time of season 1 he's gone. I mean, sure he is in a few he is a presence in season 2. He has like 3 or 4 episodes maybe, but he's mostly a plot device for Michael. Michael loses him and he's looking for him, he's searching for him, and that leads to the betrayal at the end of season 2. And I mean, I guess it really all boils down to the fault of the writers. Like, this is one thing that I will, like, blame them for, is the handling of Walt, and I guess just not thinking ahead enough. Like, hey, if you're not going to do a time jumps, you can't have a kid character on the show. You need characters who aren't going to noticeably age throughout the seasons when you aren't doing time jumps. And Lost doesn't do time jumps. I mean, kind of later on in the show, you get the 3 year time jump, but it's not so much a 3 year time jump. It's complicated, but for the most part, when you get these first 3 seasons, there aren't time jumps. Like, there's no time jump between seasons 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Really only when you get to 4 and 5, you start getting this kind of like 3 year time jump, which isn't really a time jump, because a lot of it is filled in through flashbacks and or flash forwards, flashbacks and flash forwards, I suppose. But a traditional time jump would happen, like, at the end of a season and the beginning of a season, right? And Lost didn't do time jumps, which I'm glad they didn't, because a lot of these cliffhangers don't work with time jumps, especially season 1, because there's nothing that would play well with a time jump in season 1. And the reason I didn't want them to do time jumps, and I'm glad they didn't, is because time jumps don't work. Time jumps are time jumps are difficult to pull off, especially with a show like this. And what I don't want in a show is for to do a time jump and then waste time flashing back to that time jump. Heroes did that. Heroes would have time jumps in between the season, and then there would be an episode where Hero would jump in time, or there would be a flashback to in between that time jump. If you're going to do a time jump, don't show the time jump anyway. In that case, just don't do it. I feel like Lost, if you did a time jump, you would have to show what goes on in that time jump, right? And you would either have to show what goes on in that time jump, or imply that nothing of significance happens during that time jump, which I also wouldn't buy. For example, Friday Night Lights had time jumps after every season, but that's fine because the implication is that nothing really significant happens because it's not the football season, the new season picks up again with the new football season starting. So yeah, I mean, this is all. I guess they just should have had the foresight to not have a character like Walt as a child character in this show. I mean, unless they were planning to just have him be kidnapped at the end and written off that way, if that was their intent, which I guess at this point it was their intent. I just kind of wish that they had followed through a little bit more with the special angle of it. Like, the implication is that Walt is different in some way, and that's why he gets taken at the end. That's why the others are curious about him, is because he is different. But again, that's never really explained or elaborated on. Uh, and that's not so much a fault of season one as it would be later on seasons. But by the time you explain it, he's not relevant anymore, right? I don't know if you want to waste time, you know, waste time on a character who hasn't. Like, do you want to spend time in season six on a character who hasn't been relevant for the last four or five seasons? Is that really how you want to donate time in that season? Especially when time in season six is so precious, with so much going on in that season. So, again, specifically about this episode, and I mean, there's nothing crazy bad about it. It's just it's not really all that interesting, uh, and, it's kind of disappointing that they saddle Michael with this storyline, because Harold Farno is a, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is a good actor, and it seems a little disappointing that he's stuck with this storyline, which is not not a great storyline, and especially, like, he's at this point he's the only male black actor on the show, and you're giving him the storyline of the absentee father, and like, I don't know how I feel about that. Uh, and that's like the main plot, and even like the B plot of the show doesn't really do much to advance things either. Like, this is probably the most filler episode you get of Lost, besides just, I mean, for this season, besides just character development for Michael. But like, the B plot of this story is pretty much Charlie and Claire's diary, which has a payoff at the end. But again, that all feels very tacked off and tacked on, and that itself doesn't really have a payback, because the dreams of the Black Rock don't really go anywhere, and we know what the Black Rock is, and that's not what she's describing in her dreams. So I would maybe say it's a coincidence, but we know there's no such thing as coincidences in Lost, so we don't really know, you know, why she's dreaming that, or what the significance of that is. And it's not like she's going to tell us, because she comes back at the end of this episode with no memory of what's going on. Which I suppose is the big moment of the episode at the end. Locke and Boone find Claire wandering in the jungle while they're looking for Vincent, which is the cliffhanger ending supposed to make you tune in next time. But that whole thing feels very tacked on as well. So I mean, and also, just like, I don't like the interactions between Walt and, I mean, between Michael and Locke. Those always kind of annoyed me. We do get the return of the polar bear, which I noticed something interesting about the polar bear, which I don't know if this was intentional. I mean, it probably wasn't intentional. Uh, I don't know if anyone else has ever noticed this, but this is the first time we see this polar bear. It attacks Walt. We don't see this polar bear again until season 3, when it attacks Mr. Echo, and then we don't see this polar bear again. So I mean, I don't know what's going on, Mr. Polar Bear, but your 2 appearances involve attacking black guys. So I mean, hey, just throwing that out there. An odd observation that I noticed. They got a racist polar bear on the island, apparently. But yeah, so after this, This, of course, leads to Homecoming, which is another Charlie flashback. I don't think it's a great Charlie flashback, if I'm being honest, but it is a decent enough episode. It's a big epic showdown with Ethan, and again, we're very much towards the latter half of the season. So you get Homecoming, then you slow down a little bit with Outlaws and Numbers, and then right there it picks up into the finale push. You going Deus Ex Machina, then Do No Harm, The Greater Good, Born to Run, Exodus. I mean, so we're nearing the beginning of the end here, is basically. But yeah, uh, up next is Homecoming, and I will see you guys then.